Hello, Rainer aka Mac, and welcome. In this video I break down the recent AMA, or Ask Me Anything, with the team who are working on the quantum system. A big thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Firstly, a welcome to Joshua Chappell, who became my latest channel member, and Dr. Dante for becoming my latest patron. Thank you all so much for the support. If you do want to support the channel even further, it is all very much appreciated. Follow the links in the description below. So for those who don't know, Quantum is the behind-the-scenes system that will allow Star Citizen to create and manage a realistic and dynamic universe through the world actions of NPCs. Now, Quantum works through observing the actions of hundreds of thousands of lightweight NPCs called Quanta. Each Quanta has its own desires, skills, jobs, and inventory, but without the overheads of things like pathfinding, animation, and even geometry, so they're not physicalized unless they need to be. Quanta represent the rich background world of Star Citizen that we are a part of, and Quantum will use these Quanta to create contextually appropriate NPCs or events for the player to interact with, as well as serve as the backbone to the economy. Now, this is being headed up by Tony Zurovec and his team, which presented to us last year at CitizenCon this quantum system. I have linked to that panel in the description below. It is most definitely worth watching after this. Today's Q&A answered our questions regarding this incredible system, so let's get to it. First question, will Quantum be used to generate planetary missions? Now, they say Quantum will be creating missions based on the actions of Quanta, as we say, those background NPCs. The dynamic mission system will be creating missions based on what the Quanta are doing and what kinds of services they need. I mean, it would be very cool if then one of those Quanta goes planetside and requires help planetside, and then we have to go and find them. Next question is, will the Quanta be physicalized when in the field of view of the players? Now, they say Quanta don't represent the actual NPCs that you'll interact with most of the time. Only when the player triggers the problematic chance to encounter an NPC, given the sort of density of Quanta in the area, will an NPC be spawned for the player to see and interact with. Things that will bring Quanta into existence are things like spawning service beacons, attacking players, answering calls from players, and so on. So there's hundreds of thousands of them on the back end, all going around doing their own thing, but then based on probability volumes based on a lot of data, will they then either spawn in or not? Next question, is there any dynamic content created from Quantum simulation in patch 3.9? Now, they say not in 3.9. It is still work in progress, but they will keep us updated. Will factory nodes on planets be physical locations in the PU? Now, they say for now, factories, refineries, and manufacturing nodes are all virtual entities that exist to spur traffic in the economic simulation and eventually generate service beacons. In the long term, they do hope to link as many things that happen in the Quantum as possible to the actual player-facing game. So to start with, it sounds like they're just sort of creating mission scenarios for players to take on, but eventually these refineries, factories, manufacturing nodes, and all these sort of places will likely have a physical presence in the verse, and then you will sort of see the AI going back and forth based on this probability volume. So is there any tech needed before implementing Quantum, like the iCache or server meshing, or can it just be implemented right now, as in tier 0, and then improve as we go forward? A great question. Now, they say there are always compromises that they can make to get the majority of the benefits before all of the necessary tech is in place. And they do plan to do that as much as possible so the player can begin to feel the benefit of this dynamic simulation as soon as possible. Server meshing and iCache will definitely help with the process, but the tech requirements are more on being able to read and write the other existing services already in, like the shopping service, the probability volume service, and the new dynamic mission service. So this is great news. They do not need things like server meshing or iCache or all these back-end tech to get this thing working in its early state. I do hope they decide to drop it into a build sometime soon so we can really start to see the economy just being more dynamic, giving players missions, varying prices, and so on. Hopefully we're not waiting a long time, and hopefully they can start getting in and getting it tested. Next question, can Quantum take into the account a complete blockade set up by an org around a jump point? Now, they say this is one example that Tony Zurovec loves to talk about, and in the sort of design discussions in the office. A full blockade on an entire planet is impossible because people will always find a way to get supplies into the location that need it. What you will see is a huge increase in demand for supplies based on the actions surrounding that planet, like combat and piracy. So it's likely that it'll increase the prices of these commodities for players to take on jobs, meaning there will be more resources to help figure our way back down to a planet, be it via force or wit. But I do love how it'll just create this backbone structure which will drive so much of the gameplay that we see in game. Next question, will Quantum manage fauna other than humanoid beings and their behaviours? Now, they say the first version of Quantum is going to focus on NPCs and resource distribution to balance the multiplayer gameplay for players. When fauna becomes a more important part of Star Citizen, they will then take that into account as well. Basically, they say anything that is important to the economy in Star Citizen will be important to Quantum, and they want to be simulating the same things that are important to players. So eventually, things like fauna will tie into the economy for food sources, clothing, and so on. Next question, will Quantum be used to generate content such as derelict ships? Now, they say absolutely contextually appropriate content like this is exactly what Quantum aims to achieve. They want to get away from hand-placed content and make it more dynamically spawn where it's most appropriate at that moment. I do wonder how vast this system can span for content generation, but this is incredible, just being able to pop things into the game as and when needed based on all of this sort of information that it has. Will the economic displays around landing zones present live information from Quantum? Now, they say we're actually spending a lot of effort visualizing the massive amount of data that Quantum generates. They say it's no small task. They have been working on visualizing this data in many ways to identify oddities and trends in a way that the economy moves. This information would be entirely possible to show up on in-game screens in, say, the TDD, but we have no plans to do that yet. Right now, we're focused on interactivity with players. So eventually, yes, this will obviously feed them the information they need, and then using, hopefully, building blocks, they can create the UI to show us kind of like a Wall Street in-game for traders to use. Next question is, can this system create new companies or NPC organizations dynamically? And they say we could, but for the first iteration, we're going to use organizations as a constant. Economy balance is the primary focus of this first iteration of Quantum. I wonder if they mean anything to do with our organizations. Can't imagine so, but we'll see. Will Quantum be used to populate prisons? Now, they say this is exactly the kind of thing that Quantum was made to handle. The population of prisons should be the result of the amount of crime, security, and arrest in the system. Quantum is a full real simulation that records events exactly like this. Having static numbers of prisoners that never change is what we're getting around by employing a simulation that can contextualize things like how many prisoners should there be in this prison. Also, when you think about it, NPCs will end up in prison as a result of the action it decided to take. Even if they didn't physicalize this and make it happen in front of you in the verse, the system determines what happened when an NPC comes face to face with the law enforcement. Maybe they're caught and imprisoned, and in that case, the prisons will fill up. How will the resources in asteroid fields and planets be managed by Quantum? Both Chris Roberts and Tony Zurovec want resources that will eventually deplete from the universe, so the PU is always moving. Quantum will know about where resources are and track the concentration of these goods in the universe. They say they plan to be able to adjust these resources through Quantum based on the activity of Star Citizen, but their ultimate goal is to not directly affect things in kind of like a god mode. Quantum should be influencing the behaviours of the Quanta and economic activity, not spontaneously generating resources from the god seat. They say we're not at that point yet, but that's part of the ultimate goal. So this was, I suppose, harking back to when Chris was talking about mining veins. Once a mining vein is completely depleted, then it will not return. Anyway, next question. Will Quantum also simulate the economy of the Banu, the Jan, or the Vanduul? Now, they say their primary focus right now is to get the UEE economy to start. Once alien economies take on more of an active role on the economics of Star Citizen, they will then look to incorporate the effects that their economies will have on the UEE one. So yes, eventually. Will Quantum be able to see all meshed servers simultaneously? And they say the back-end services like the shopping service and the probability volume service already take into account activity across all servers. Quantum will interface with those systems and the entirety of the economic activity from players through analytic events. Next question. As I understand it, it always tries to balance the economy by making NPC accept the most rewarding jobs. So how do you take into account risk versus reward or mission length for the NPCs? Now they say each Quanta has its own risk profile that will be used to modulate and perceive value of a job. Mission length is also considered through the fact that the value of the job is an amount or per period of time, for example, UEC per hour. So basically they're saying that each Quanta will make decisions based on their own individual personalities. How much risk each Quanta will take will vary amongst other factors, which leads well on to the next question. Will this open the door for NPC crews? Now they say NPC crews are under the purview of AI behavior and is too heavyweight for this kind of thing that Quantum aims to handle. Quantum will only be accounting for the end result of an NPC action. It won't account for details that the player will see when the NPCs are on their ship. But it does account for things like how good of a pilot is this NPC, and then use that to determine the results of the simulation interactions. So I guess it's kind of that the profiles of the Quanta will determine their behaviors and personalities to some level, but not as deep as the NPCs that players will be able to hire. But it does kind of tie in slightly, but it doesn't open the door to NPC crews, unfortunately. Next question, will Quanta pirates have to find a place to sell their cargo? Pirates will have to make a living as well, so stolen goods will have to be offloaded and sold to some of the shadier merchants willing to look the other way. These shadier merchants take the risk of being apprehended by the law for trading in stolen goods, so these goods will end up being cheaper. So yes, basically. Next question, will Quanta use different ships? Now Quantas will have access to different ships, and the ship characteristics will have a direct impact on the job values for the Quanta. For instance, ship speed, cargo speed, ship protections, and all the elements that have a direct influence. Of course, a Quanta risk profile will have a great influence on the Quanta's type of ship it chooses. So based on many factors like the job at hand and the ability of the Quanta, this will determine what the best ship is for the job. Next question is, will item prices be systemic? Now they say definitely. The whole idea behind Quantum is to simulate a full-scale economy to make it as credible and balanced as possible. When the Quanta interacts with the various shops, factories, refineries, they systematically negotiate prices. They say they use price discovery algorithms, similar to the ones that are used for real-world economies, to help discover these prices. So yes, they definitely want to use the prices generated by Quantum. Anyway, next question. Will Quantum generate events like a famine on a planet that in turn increases the prices for food and adds missions related to that event? Now they say Quantum focuses on the chain reaction in the economy and making these logical scenarios manifest in game. Star Citizen is too vast a game for developers to keep up with all of the things that players will be doing, which is why they're building Quantum to do this for us. So it sounds like, yes, it will kind of generate these kinds of things, but yeah, it sounds like Quantum will handle this kind of stuff. Do NPCs and economic nodes have different strategies or behaviors? They say Quanta have different profiles that determine their behaviors and opportunities, as we know. The economic node strategies are directly influenced by the environment and the resources available. So to be clear, NPCs that you see in-game are not governed by Quantum. By the time an NPC is instantiated, its behavior is governed by its local AI. Next question is, will Quantum include all Star Systems economics or just the existing ones present in the PU? Now Quantum will focus on whichever economies are impacting the player experience and expand as the game expands. So a question was asked regarding sort of UEC per hour and how much are we going to be earning and what's the sort of goal right now for that. But they did say that because this is still alpha and they are adding a lot more systems like mining, prisons and all these sort of things that have a large impact on the economy, they're not quite ready to put a finger on how much UEC per hour, you know, your average player will earn. So unfortunately they couldn't really answer that just yet, but it's understandable. Next question, are there any plans for Quanta to take into account or be able to show territorial control, like if a player owns a beacon on a planet maybe? They say right now they're focused on things that currently affect gameplay, economy and the multiplayer experience. We're not going to tackle things like territorial control until it is a gameplay loop and players have access to it, which makes sense and is understandable. And the final question is, how is the quantum system progressing? They say it's progressing great, but the Quanta are starting to gain sentience. Anyway, that is it for the AMA of Quantum. Obviously, there is no date yet as to when we can expect it, but this system is just incredible, and it will dynamically change the game as we know it today when it does come in, driving this economy and AI population, generating tons of missions of all different types. Oh, I cannot wait. As I say, I highly suggest watching Tony Zarevek's panel at CitizenCon. I have linked it in the description below. It is a bit to get your head around, but once this system comes in, it'll be a great addition to say the least. What is also great right now is that we know it doesn't rely on any tech which is in development, so they can start implementing it as soon as they are ready to. Obviously, like with everything CIG create, we will get a tier 0, sort of a basic version of that, and it will grow over time, but it sounds like they are trying to use this system for the systems that we have in game right now, and then as they introduce more systems, it'll absorb that and work alongside it. So fingers crossed we get this sort of sooner than later. I don't know how far on they are with getting it into a release sort of version candidate, but do let me know what you think. It is great to hear that they are progressing on this, even if we don't know when it's coming. Anyway, with that said, quite a long video. This is why I didn't include it in Star Citizen Sunday. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. We have got lots more Star Citizen content coming thick and fast. Also, tick the notification bell. That way you'll know exactly when my videos go live. Hit the like button if you're excited to get Quantum in game as quick as possible. And come follow me over on twitch.tv/supermacbrothers Ryan. Come and hang out with us. We have a wonderful community. Everybody's welcome, be it new or old. Thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.